James and Ben back here for OddsChecker. We got a UFC card going down in San Antonio, Texas, taking place at the AT&T Center. It's Marlon Vera, Cory Sandhagen. We're going to go over the main card here today, and we are going to start first as I share our screen here. We are going to start first actually in the flyweight division. We've got Alex Perez taking on Manel Kape, and right now you can see on OddsChecker, Manel Kape on pretty much every book is the favorite here. Some having him almost 2-1. Who you liking here, Ben?
Yeah, this is tough for me because I like Kape just because of his hands, but minus 190, I'm not sure I'm loving the price tag on Kape here. He definitely has really, really good power for as light as he is. Because, I mean, for a flyweight, he has some great power. And we've seen that against Ode Osborne. We saw it against Sumagulov. And he's riding a 3-fight win streak. So, I mean, his last two losses, Nicolau and Pantoja, like those are not necessarily bad losses in my book. And he's looking good against a legend who Perez, we just saw him fight for the title against Davison. Like we know that he's got some good talent, but it just seems like he's lost now twice in a row to submissions. But at the same time, Kape is not a guy that's going to submit him, or at least I don't think so. You wouldn't expect Kape to be the guy that can submit him here. So Perez, he could take this to the ground, try and use an advantage there. But I don't know if he can get it there. I don't know if Kape's going to hit him too hard, too quick. I think Kape can win this on the feet, but I don't love minus 190. So I might look for a prop or something, but I'm a little torn here, to be honest.
Okay, I have a different read on this fight, which is good. We're starting off a little bit different here. I really like Manel Kape in this spot. If you look at Alex Perez, I show you here on Tapology, he's had more canceled fights since 2020 than he's had actual fights. Like, look at this. You mentioned that title loss to Davison Figueiredo. That was back in 2020. Like, basically, we're still in COVID and everything, right? So his last fight against Pantoja, again, Pantoja is probably fighting for the title next. He got finished in the first round. We've seen this happen over and over again with Alex Perez, where if he doesn't come out, fast himself, like in the Yusuf Ormiga fight, we see him get finished. The fight I look at, which I think is going to be similar to this one, Joseph Benavidez. I know this was back in 2018. Benavidez went out there and destroyed Alex Perez and knocked him out. And we saw him win by TKO in that fight. And it was one of those fights where Benavidez just blitzed him. And he's fighting a guy, Manel Kape, who I think has even more power than Alex Perez here. You add in the fact that Perez is a bit older. You add in the fact that he hasn't fought that much. This, to me, screams Manel Kape by knockout. So I like Kape not only as it is, I also will be looking for the Manel Kape by knockout. I might even look for the Manel Kape first or second round prop because, again, like I've shown you here, we've seen a habit of Alex Perez getting finished early in these fights. Granted, Perez could maybe do this himself. You could maybe look at the under as well. I don't know what the price is on that. But I just think that what do we got here? Under 2.5 is minus 165. I mean, I could see that hitting for sure. But I just feel like Manel Kape is on his way to fighting for a title. And I feel like Alex Perez has had his opportunity. He's had a number of setbacks, a lot of them beyond his control. But I'm going Manel Kape in this fight. And the other thing to keep an eye on, let's see if Alex Perez can make weight. He's had some trouble with that in the past. He's actually had a fight, I think it was against Matt Schnell. There was one of them I have to look at here. Perez. There was one fight or a couple fights where he's had some weight cut issues. So maybe look at that as well, too, just to see how he's on the scale. But I like Manel Kape by knockout big time in this one. So that's where I'm going with here. Okay, next fight we're going to look at here is in the flyweight division, in the women's flyweight division. We've got Andrea Lee taking on Maycee Barber. And right now on OddsChecker, Maycee Barber, the line's gone up. She's up now almost 3-1. Come back on Andrea Lee, plus 230. Who you liking here?
Yeah, so Maycee Barber, I think a lot of people were higher on her when she came in, and then she had those 2 losses, Roxanne Modafferi, and then Alexa Grasso, who we just saw take the title there. So that loss actually aged really well because at the time I was like, that loss, I don't know, doesn't look so good for her. Now we just saw Alexa win the title, so a bit different now. And she's won 3 fights since then, and one of them was against Miranda Mravik, another kind of prospect that everyone was looking out, Maverick there. So, I mean, she has won 3 fights in a row, and the only thing I'll say here is I think she's maybe less technical than Lee, but she fights with more physicality. Like sometimes you see those technical fighters, they just get out-muscled. The other fighters are just stronger and they can take them down. I think that might be a little bit of what we see here because Barber, I should say, fights very aggressive. Like if she gets on top, she can keep you there for an entire round. I just think she's going to be the more physical fighter here, not necessarily the more technical fighter, but sometimes you just need to be more physical. And that's definitely what Barber has playing to her advantage here. I don't know what's going to happen if Lee gets on her back, but then on the other side, if Lee takes Barber down, I actually think Barber can reverse the position. I think she's just a stronger fighter. So I do think she'll take advantage of her physicality here in this fight. I think I'm going to look for by decision because I don't see her finishing Lee, but the minus 270 is a pretty high price tag for this fight. So I might look at by decision to knock the juice down a bit.
Save yourself the hassle. Bet the fight goes the distance. This is another fight that kind of reminds me of last week's fight with Jennifer Maia and Casey O'Neill. With what happened there, Maia ended up winning a decision. I'm a little bit worried about this fight for Maycee Barber just because you look at her last 2 wins. Jessica I retired right after that fight. Montana Del Rosa, we saw her get finished in the second round in her last fight. Granted, Montana fought an absolute killer in Tatiana Suarez. And the Maverick fight, I think 90% of people watching that fight felt like she shouldn't have won that. That should have gone the other way. So you're right. The fights against Grasso, Modafferi, she hurt her knee early in that one. Grasso, no big deal. She's coming off the knee injury and then had to fight Grasso. So it's kind of tough there. I do think Maycee will end up winning. I think she'll win a decision here, but I do think that you got a fighter here in Andrea Lee, who at times has looked good. The Calvillo fight, she looked great. Ashley Evans Smith, Montana De La Rosa, Shevchenko submitted her. That was the Antonina, obviously not Valentina. And then you look at some of her losses as well. Like she went to a split decision with Lauren Murphy, who's fought for a title. Joanne Wood, who we saw win last weekend. I think this could be a bit of a trap as well with Andrea Lee maybe pulling off the upset. So rather than bet, I say it's either Maycee Barber bet her by decision or just play the fight goes the distance. Neither of these girls finished that much, to be honest. So I think that's probably a safe bet. And Andrea Lee's also really tough to finish too. So I think Barber by decision is a good play. And I think the fight goes the distance is a good play, but don't lay a bunch of juice on Maycee Barber here, because again, I'm a bit worried that we might see a repeat of last week where we have a fighter coming in that's supposed to win and ends up losing to a veteran. So I'm going to go Maycee Barber by decision. All right, let's get to the next fight in the featherweight division. This was kind of put together at the last minute. We've got Nate Landwehr taking on Austin Lingo. Landwehr was supposed to fight someone else. Austin Lingo was supposed to fight Ricardo Ramos. He misses weight. They canceled the fight, so they put these two together. And right now on OddsChecker, we've got Nate Landwehr as a doesn't have a lot of books out yet, but minus 265 favorite to come back on Lingo, plus 200. They spelled Lingo's name wrong. Got to talk to OddsChecker about that. But who are you liking here?
Yeah. Honestly, I like to go the distance just because Landwehr, yeah, sure, I liked him coming in, but his power hasn't really seemed to translate to the UFC. He had 8 knockouts before. He hasn't landed a single knockout in the UFC now. He does have a submission finish, but I feel like this is just going to be a stand and trade on the feet. I don't know that either man is really going to look to take it to the ground, or if they do actually finish it with submission, maybe I could see ground and pound, but honestly, I see this one staying on the feet. I think they both prefer the fight to be there. Lingo, on the other side, same exact thing. He had a few decent knockouts. He actually didn't even have that many knockouts in the regional scenes. He doesn't have one in the UFC. His power just hasn't translated. We've seen him go to a decision a lot. I like to just go to a decision. I think both these guys aren't guys that are going to get you out of there with those hard hits. It's going to be more of a technical fight. Just stay on the feet, just pick you apart for 15 minutes. I see it going the distance. I don't really like laying the juice on Landwehr. I don't know if it's worth a dog play on Lingo here, so I'm gonna go to the scorecards.
I think that's a fair play. I do like Nate Landwehr a lot in this fight. I think he's a lot better. I think Austin Lingo is someone that has not really performed that well in the UFC. And granted, I know his debut is against Lucius Alal on short notice, but he's got wins over Jacob Kilburn, who basically lost that fight and one other and got released from the UFC. Luis Saldana, and he hasn't fought since 2021. He's had some bad luck with fights getting canceled. In fact, I want to say that fight with Onama, they ended up replacing him with Nate Landwehr, if I'm not mistaken. But I think Nate's a lot better of a fighter. I do worry a little bit about the fight goes the distance just because Nate does have the knockout power, although we saw him actually get a couple submissions, right? On Klein, and then he had he's gone the distance, you're right, more often than not. And we've all seen Landwehr get knocked out with Julian Erosa, but Austin Lingo doesn't have the same type of power that Julian Erosa does, in my opinion. So I think Nate might be worth throwing in a parlay. I do think he's just a lot better. He should win this fight. I'd be pretty surprised if Lingo pulled this off, especially with the layoff and just how he's performed so far. But that's about it. I don't know if I'll play the fight goes the distance, but yeah, that might be the only plays. Maybe put him in one parlay, but this is a tricky fight. I got to be honest. So next fight we're going to look at is the co-main event. Holly Holm taking on Yana Santos. Now, if you're sitting here going, who's Yana Santos? Yana was formerly known as Yana Kunitskaya. She got married to former UFC light heavyweight Thiago Santos, so that's why she has the last name there. And she's taking on the preacher's daughter, Holly Holm, who, by the way, at 41 years of age, just signed a new 4-fight deal with the UFC. She's going to be sticking around for a while, the Dan Henderson of the women's division. And Holly Holm, as you would imagine, the favorite here. Who are you liking here, Ben?
Yeah, I think after that loss to Caitlin Vieira, which was controversial, I think if anything, it kind of sparked a fire in her because, like you said, she signed the new deal. That was a split decision loss. If she would have won, she would have been on a good win streak, good 3-fight win streak, with her last loss being, of course, that loss to Amanda Nunes for the belt. It seems like when she's losing, it's only for the belt. I mean, she hasn't lost in a while to someone that it wasn't in a title fight against before that Caitlin Vieira fight. So I think she does bounce back here, but then again, you're laying a pretty hefty price tag. I mean, honestly, I've seen there's bigger price tags on the card. So I would say, if anything, if you like the Landwehr parlay, maybe throw this one in there with her, because I do think Holm wins this fight, even at 41. Yeah, she's had knockout losses, but I don't want to necessarily say she's looking super bad, because I haven't seen it from her. Even in the Ketlin fight, she was fighting well, even though she ended up losing. But I think, if anything, it looks worse on the record than she actually looked in the fight. So I do like her in this spot, maybe to throw her in a parlay. But yeah, I mean, tough fight here for her still.
I think also, if you want to bring down the juice a little bit, how's Holly Holm winning most of her fights? It's by decision, right? I mean, pretty much all of them, other than Betch which was a 3rd round finish. She mainly fights in 5-round fights. I think decision for Holly Holm is probably fair. Here's what it comes down to. On paper, Holly Holm is the better fighter. You just wonder, at her age, at some point she's going to slow down. I don't think it matters. Yana Santos, we should mention, has not fought since July of 2021. She was finished in the 1st round. She also gave birth. So she's coming off a pregnancy. She hasn't fought in a bit. Yeah, Holly Holm should win this. I'd be pretty surprised if she doesn't. If she does, then the UFC might want to relook at that 4-fight deal. But I think Holm gets it done by decision in this one. So that's likely where I'm heading on this fight. Okay, let's get to the main event. Really exciting fight here in the bantamweight division. We've got Marlon Vera taking on Cory Sandhagen, and it's Cory Sandhagen, the favorite, -180. You can see the line's been pretty much like this the whole time. Cory Sandhagen just a slight favorite, just under 2-1. Come back on Vera, +144, 155 around there. Who you liking, Ben?
This one is impossible for me. I don't even know if I can pick a winner. I would almost say I want to take the fight not to end inside, or I want to take the fight to end inside the distance. But at the same time, I feel like it's like an unstoppable force beast and a movable object. Like, these guys both hit so hard. But Vera, he's never been finished in his career. And Cory Sandhagen, he's never been knocked out. He's only been submitted 1 time. So, I mean, you're talking about guys who it seems like they're never getting finished, but on the same time, they both put out a ton of damage, and it's a 5-round fight. So it's so hard for me to pick this fight. I just feel like you have 2 guys who are just standing trading there. If anything, Vera, I would say maybe he's looked a little more consistent lately. But then again, Sandhagen, I think he's being a little overlooked here, even as the favorite. I understand he's the favorite, so that sounds stupid. But I want to say he's overall the better fighter, but Vera's looked better recently. So Cory Sandhagen, he is coming off a good win, that doctor stoppage win, actually, after losing the title fight against Petr Yan. But how is that loss aging? Because we've seen Petr Yan now, he's losing to Aljamain Sterling. He's losing the belt again, most recently in his fight. So, I mean, like, I don't know. He just lost to Merab. I don't know how that loss is looking now. That TJ Dillashaw split decision loss, it seems like those losses have not aged as well as Vera's recent wins. So Vera, I'm signing with him based on the recency bias, I guess, which isn't necessarily a good thing to look at, but I just don't know what I'm going to get from Cory Sandhagen here at this point in his career. So I like the dog play on Vera.
I get it. I do. I love how we disagree. Sometimes this is one where we're going to be disagreeing, because I look at the last couple fights a little bit differently here. So first, we should mention that. First I should mention I pick Vera fights wrong all the time. Although I did pick him correctly in the last fight against Dominic Cruz, but I think I had Edgar against him and some others as well. So he's definitely surprised me. He's certainly taken it up another level over the last little bit. But you look at it here; they're both 30. Cory's a little bit taller. They have almost the same reach, 70.5 to 70. So Cory, typically a bigger bantamweight, is not really going to have that advantage against Chito. Now, Chito's got the power edge. Cory, I would say, better technical striking, has that 5-round experience as well. Let's dissect their last couple wins here quickly, because I think it tells us a bit as far as what we're trying to achieve. Okay, so let's go all the way back to the Song Yadong fight. I thought he won that. That should have been a win. Sean O'Malley, weird fight. He still, Sean O'Malley didn't slip on a banana peel in that fight. Chito Vera contributed to that injury. He lost to Aldo. Most bantamweights are going to lose to Aldo. Very good fighter, even at his age. That's not a bad loss to have. Davey Grant, good win. Frankie Edgar, want to bring that fight up. I thought he was losing that fight, to be honest. I think if you go back and watch, Edgar had a lot of success in the early rounds, and then out of nowhere, he knocks him out. So that was a bit of a weird one as far as that fight. The Rob Font fight was really close, although if you look at it, Chito did outstrike him and got the win. That's probably one of his best wins next to O'Malley, I'd say. Was good. And the Cruz fight, Cruz is kind of on the tail end of his career. I think the only impressive thing was that he was actually able to finish him. But again, it was pretty competitive throughout. Like, it wasn't like Chito won every single round. I thought it was quite competitive leading up to that head kick. So kind of to me, the Frankie Edgar and Cruz fights are kind of the same. Whereas with Cory Sandhagen, I think we've seen a bit more cleaner performances. Now let's talk about the Song Yadong fight. Dominant win there. Okay. Like, there was no question. He obviously got the doctor stoppage, but he won every round of that fight. That was a good win. Petr Yan, I'm glad you brought that up. Yes, maybe the win is not aging so well. That was a short notice fight for him, if you remember. It was, I believe it was supposed to be Sterling and Yan, the rematch, and then Sterling got injured, so they brought Sandhagen in for the interim title. So I don't necessarily fault him. And while I did think Yan won that fight, Cory, he didn't look out of place there. It was, a 5-round fight that went the distance. He beat TJ Dillashaw. I don't care what anyone says. I clearly thought he beat TJ Dillashaw in that fight. That was kind of a bad decision, in my opinion. And then you look at them having the similar opponent. He finished Frankie Edgar in the first round. He finished Marlon Moraes. Granted, Moraes a little bit chinny. And then he got finished by Aljamain Sterling. And I think that loss actually made him a much better fighter. Since then, we've seen more of a finishing ability here for Cory Sandhagen. We've seen him become a little bit smarter. But I think one of the key things in this fight is, how is Chito Vera going to win? Is he going to knock out Cory Sandhagen? Probably not. Cory Sandhagen has never been knocked out in his UFC career. Cory Sandhagen doesn't get hit that much. If you look at most of his fights, go look at him after. He's not taking a ton of damage, whereas Chito tends to get in these wars sometimes. So I think that's a little bit interesting as well, too. Add in the fact that Sandhagen's had a bit more, I want to say he's had a little bit more 5-round experience, right? Dillashaw and Yan, I believe, were 5-round fights. And Cory trains at elevation. I like Sandhagen here. The play here, though, is the fight goes the distance, because I don't see Chito finishing Cory Sandhagen unless maybe this is the fight where Sandhagen finally gets finished. I just don't see that happening here, because Chito does have power, but he doesn't have he doesn't have the type of power I think that could knock out a Cory Sandhagen. And then conversely, I don't think Sandhagen's going to get like a flying knee knockout over Chito Vera. Again, Chito pretty durable too. So save yourself the heartache here. Take the over, take the fight goes the distance. But I'm going Cory Sandhagen to get it done by decision in a fight that I think is going to show that he still belongs at the top of the bantamweight division. So there we go. All right, that is it for UFC San Antonio. No card next week. I think we get a break, right? So We'll be back then for UFC 287, which is the next pay-per-view. So that's in April. So we're taking next week off, but I hope you guys cash those bets this weekend. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.